You lay down a blow on my son so savage that you severed his earlobe straight through his throat and across his chest, leaving him with a 17-centimetre injury. Josh suffocated on his own blood at the scene, and there were 40 people that witnessed that.
Hello, and welcome to Crime Suspect, where each week we unravel some of the UK's most prolific crimes, as well as providing in-depth analysis on the criminality that plagues our nation. On the show today, a war on weapons. Police have been granted new powers to crack down on zombie-style knives and machetes. But is it too little, too late? Next, is it safe on your street? I'll be taking you, virtually, to Leeds for this week's Postcode Watch. And finally, it's your chance to book a crook as we show you this week's wanted criminals. Joining me for all of this today is Chair of Haringey's Independent Stop and Search Group, Ken Hinds, ex-gang member and founder of Voice for Youth Against Violence, Jermaine Lawlor, and Tracy Hanson, whose wonderful son Josh was violently murdered by Shane O'Brien, who then went on the run and became one of Britain's most wanted men. Thank you all very much for being here. Now, you have the right to remain watching. This is Crime Suspect. So, police are set to receive more powers to seize and destroy menacing weapons as part of a crackdown on knife crime. According to a report by the Office for National Statistics, the number of people killed with a knife in England and Wales between 2021 and 2022 was the highest on record for 76 years. And more recently, 8 people were stabbed on the final day of the Notting Hill Carnival by men wielding machetes, prompting the need to act now. The new measures will mean a maximum 2-year prison sentence could be handed down to anyone found in possession and those manufacturing and selling zombie knives. They could also face prison time. Ken, these very frightening and quite revolting zombie-style knives, have you seen an increase in young people wanting to use them or wanting to lay their hands on them?
Absolutely. Over the last, say, 5-6 years, I've seen an increase on the amount of young people who are carrying. Because I see it from two sides, because I'm on the streets and I'm working to try to give young people an alternative other than just being tunnel vision and thinking that they have to carry it for their own protection. Now, what doesn't help also is when the media and the police put out pictures of the sort of knife that they are actually taking in, because some young people, it kind of glorify them, thinking, well, they need to step up their game.
Only this week, Ken, there was a picture of Chris Philp, the policing minister, stood alongside 3 police officers, and he was holding one of these weapons, and it was about that kind of size. Is that a good messaging?
It's not, because, as I said, back in the days, when you had a gang of maybe up to 10 people, maybe 1 or 2 might be carrying a weapon. And back in my days, it used to be a flick knife or a lock knife, something that you can easily be discreet and hide. Nowadays, they're carrying these zombie knives, the machetes, the sword, and 9 out of 10, if a group of 10 of them, 9 out of 10 will be carrying and expecting not just to terrorise people, but to actually go savage and murder people with that weapon.
Why would a young person with their whole life potentially in front of them want to ruin whatever future they might have by using a zombie knife on somebody else?
The young people actually, a lot of them don't want to carry knives. I feel that from the work that we've been doing with young people, it's the environment. It's not to blame the environment or the factors, but to look at the factors. A lot of these kids, they don't value their lives. There's an identity crisis. They don't know who they are. They don't know, the future prospects and their achievements and what they can become. So I feel like when that's thrown away from a young age, it's easy to throw your life away. So I don't feel that there's necessarily one reason why these young people were carrying knives. I feel that a lot of them are scared. They're scared of being stabbed themselves, maybe scared that they owe people money. So for them, it's a form of protection, not knowing that carrying a knife, it's more likely to be used against yourself, and you're never safe carrying a knife.
Yeah, all the statistics bear that out, that if you take a knife out onto the streets, you're far more likely to become a victim of knife crime yourself.
Yeah, most definitely. But a lot of these young people that are under drugs, the influence of drugs, negative music, social media doesn't help, poor education, poor family support. So these young people feel that they're going to be safer carrying a knife when in reality they're going to be in far more danger, and the consequences are devastating.
And you know this.
That are left behind.
You know this very well because you were that young person with a knife, weren't you, some years ago?
A long time ago, I was a young person who was affected by these issues that young people are affected by, and I was carrying a knife. From carrying a knife to actually being a victim of someone actually trying to stab me, but it was actually a miracle that the knife didn't penetrate my leg. I was stabbed with a machete 3 times, and it was only a miracle that I've still got my leg. And that made me think about my life and about the consequences of carrying a knife and the poor families that are left behind that have to carry the pieces of the children that are taken away, the lives that are taken away.
Tracy, you suffered the greatest loss as a result of knife crime, and I will proudly admit that we've become friends in recent years, as I've been on a tiny, tiny piece of that journey with you. So when Josh went into that bar, enjoying himself on a night out, and there was a confrontation, none of which was Josh's making, what did that evil character then do to Josh?
Can I just say as well, he wasn't even enjoying a night out. Josh had arrived there late. I brought my children up to know, stay with your back to the wall if you're not sure about a space or place, and certainly don't go into one if there's no checks being put into place, the security, stop and search, ID. Oh. So, he's walking in there, just walking in there with his girlfriend, gone to the bar, ordered a drink, stood in the venue, when this person straight away, and I will say his name, Shane O'Brien, I'm quite happy to say that, he clearly just did not like the look of my son, because Josh had done nothing. He was just standing there with his girlfriend and talking to his friends.
As all the CCTV
Absolutely.
evidence clearly showed.
Which I insisted was released.
Which was played in the court.
100%, and it's available for anyone to watch. Josh was in a space and place that he had every right to be in, albeit he should have been safer in that space and place because security should have carried out the job that they were paid to do.
Yep.
This person then approached Josh and said to him, "What's your problem?" Mm-hmm. To which Josh was baffled. His friend who's standing in front of him said Josh was completely baffled and just said, "I don't have a problem." You can see that in the CCTV. Yeah. And with that, because when he was approaching Josh, he actually had the knife in his hand ready. And he walked up to Josh, said what he said. Josh was baffled, "I don't have a problem." And with that, he laid a blow on Josh that was so savage, and I will use that word savage because it was barbaric and savage. This 6'2" man against a 5'7" young boy, 28, 21. You know this is a boy, this isn't a man. You know what you're about. You've got your ego attached to whatever you're coming with. And you lay down a blow on my son so savage that you severed his earlobe straight through his throat and across his chest, leaving him with a 17-centimetre injury. Josh suffocated on his own blood at the scene, and there were 40 people that witnessed that. 40 lives who are all living and breathing that I'm aware of, are living with trauma every single day, PTSD. There were grown men there that night that have never gone back to work because they can't even cope with what they experienced. And there were other people there that tried to save Josh's life. He died in my nephew's arms, and you can't... I make sense of it because it's what I talk about to young people all the time, and I give them the facts, and my mortuary visit, for instance, and what that felt like, what that looks like. And all I have left now are the belongings that I've kept of my son, and run my fingers into his trainers so I can feel the imprint of his toes, the feet that I used to adore because he was my beautiful boy. And I bring a baseball cap with me to a talk, or I'll say, Josh was very proud of the things that he wore and the clothes that he bought. He worked very hard. He had a really good job. And all of that is just sat in bags or boxes, you know, alongside the clothes that were cut off of his body that I got back in an evidence bag. And that's the reality of my life. And yes, oh, you're so strong, you're strong. No, I'm not strong. I'm faced with something every single day that I've got no choice about. I mean, I've met other mothers on this journey who are no longer with us because living without your child is a big ask.
Thank you. Ken, is legislation around zombie knives going to be the cure or just a part of it?
I'd just like to just offer my deepest and sincere condolence for the tragedy that befriended you or just came on to you. Really heartfelt, you know, hearing your story there. But to talk about the zombie knives and the legislation, because I can remember, I think 3-4 years ago, that a law came out that was a very similar thing to stop the zombie knives and the purchasing or even having them in your home.
It did, and the manufacturers got around it because they removed the offensive writing that used to be on the knives.
Right.
So they found a kind of loophole, as if somebody's going to read the writing on a knife as it's about to be plunged into their chest. But there you go.
And my thing is simply this. No matter what legislation you put in place, because the people who are going to get hold of it aren't the people who are law-abiding anyway or pay attention to what the law is or its consequences. It's a similar, like there's a law banning having the use of guns, but people still get hold of guns. I feel that this law is going to go the same way unless you take a multifaceted approach to try and do something effectively. Because first of all, we've got laws already that says that if you are caught carrying a knife, that you will be sent to jail for at least 6 months for the first time. But then the caveat is that if you're under 18, you don't. Now, the prolific carriers of knives currently are the people who are under 18. Between the age of probably 11 and 18 are the prolific carriers. And my thing is simply this. When they get caught with a knife and then they become a child, without it, while they've got the freedom and they've got the knives, they're now the big man. But when they get caught with it now, they're childlike, cry and things of that nature. When they go to court, they brings up ADHD or whatever other circumstances, and they never, ever get any short, sharp treatment. So what happens is, then they tell their mates, see, that, hold on, he never got, you know, that happened to him. He's got a slap on the wrist, you know.
So cry a bit.
So
tell him you've got a diagnosis.
You've got something going.
You get a slap on the wrist, and then next week you can go and pick up another knife.
Disadvantaged family, you know, all these things come in here. But my thing is simply, if you even like cry scared straight, that I used to watch the program in America, the way they have short, sharp treatment in tackling people such as this, the first-time offenders, because no point, second, third time, they've gone past their sell-by date.
Thank you, Ken. Jermaine, your solutions, please.
Yeah, first of all, my deepest condolences to the loss of your son. It's very heartfelt, and I can't imagine the day-to-day trauma that you deal with other than with the families that I currently work with that go through the same thing, and honestly, I'm very, very sorry. And I feel that the change has to start with us, you know, with myself, with yourself, the work that you're doing, Ken. And it has to evolve out because society as a whole is, depending on what side you're on, is absolutely disgusting. You know, if you're winning, it's fine. But if you're one of those people that come from these torn down, deprived areas, you're gonna be prone to not only carrying a knife, but to carrying a gun. So solution, I feel like it starts with education, early intervention, preventative work.
At school?
Definitely at school, at home.
And at home?
At home, it needs to start at home.
Yeah. Tracy, tell me, please, if you can, some of the impact of losing your beloved Josh.
The stark reality of having your child taken in a tragic and brutal attack is life-changing. Every single day is a challenge. You put on a mask, you put on a performance to be part of the world, to interact with your community, to be part of your family dynamic. But my brain and my thoughts and everything about my being is consumed with the loss of my son, Josh. I miss him terribly. Every single day is another tragic story about another young person losing their life, and it just reminds me again of the brutality around that and how a mother's going to be feeling, or a father, or a sibling, a grandparent, and the stigma that's attached with a child being murdered is horrendous. You are ostracised. There's a terror theory where people are absolutely scared to even be around you because her son was murdered. You know, people are quick to try and find positive solutions as to why. So it's easier to say that there was some blame, and then we got victim blaming, which I also have to live with as well. And when your child is murdered in a totally unprovoked attack, or, you know, in any circumstances, another person taking somebody else's life is absolutely not. It should never happen. It does happen. But the reality is I live and breathe being a bereaved mum every day, first and foremost, before I do anything else. All the work that we do at the charity, working with, as I've heard from both of the gentlemen here, you know, we need that support and help. These young people need that support and help as well.
I feel like the legislation is not going to be that impactful in terms of change because it's nothing new. How many legislations have we had? How many laws have we had? It's a start, but we need to start. The change needs to start with us.
Ken, I have to ask you the question because of your work with the Haringey Stop and Search group that you're the chair of. Is more stop and search by the police going to help?
Not at all, because, Peter, if I gave you statistics around stop and search, which says less than 3% of the stop and search is around stopping people suspected of carrying a knife or carrying a weapon, but yet, and if we hear the police saying, "Oh, we take 400 knives off the street each month." But if you equate that down to the 32 borough, it comes to less than 1 knife per week off of per borough. But we know that it's prolific carrying on knives. So my thing is that what we need is intelligent-led stop and search. At the moment, what we have is 10% of stop and search is done around the misuse of drugs, and particularly substantively around the smell of cannabis. So what they generally tend to do is what we call a fishing expedition. So they're stopping people on the hope that, all right, we're saying that we smell cannabis, even if they don't smell it, we're searching you in the hope that we might find something else on you. Going into the space where we have drug dealers, had antisocial behaviour, and people are afraid to go into that space. We need to have outreach people in there, chasing the energy in that space. I've done a programme in Brent that's been sponsored by the Home Office, and that is simply getting people like ourselves into that space, talking to everyone that uses that space. That's the residents, that's the businesses, and that's the young people, and also the perpetrators, and getting them to change the energy so that we have positivity in that space. That's the sort of thing that changes mindsets, that stops the need of the police to keep coming down and taking these people and tying themselves up and leaving them the space to do much more important work in tackling and getting the people who are grooming these young people into that sort of lifestyle. So that's my take on it.
Ken, Jermaine, Tracy, I'm in awe of the work that you all do. It really is magnificent. Bless you, and thank you very much for coming here today. Right, moving on to this week's Postcode Watch, and we're in Leeds, the most dangerous major city in West Yorkshire. Violent crime here makes up 38.4%, which totals 46,800 crimes, which actually is a decrease of 0.6% when compared year over year to the period of August 2022 to July 2023. Violence and sexual offences is the most common of all crimes reported, totalling 36,393 during 2022, with 460 offences reported here in June of this year alone. Now, if you happen to live in Leeds city centre, look away now, because it is the most dangerous neighbourhood to live in. followed by Armley and New Wortley in second place, and Osmondthorpe and Neville Hill as the third most dangerous area. Leeds' safest neighbourhood is Moortown, followed by Primley Park and Wigton Moor, and Roundhay West in third. Gangs are also rife in Leeds. The Yardies, the Peaky Miners, Middleton Boys, M Block and the Poole Estate Boys are just some of the gangs carving up crime in this major city. OK, now for the part of the show where we bring you the mugs of thugs who are terrorising our streets. Have you seen these criminals? First up is this woman, sought in connection with racially aggravated assault in Bexley. The victim, a 55-year-old man, entered a newsagent's in Brook Street, DA8, when he noticed a woman was in dispute with a member of staff. The victim attempted to intervene in the dispute when he was allegedly repeatedly assaulted, spat at and racially abused by the woman. Charming. Next, we have Matthew Mordecai, who is wanted on prison recall after serving a sentence for possession of drugs with intent to supply in Merseyside. He is described as 5 foot 8 inches tall, with brown eyes and fair hair. He is of medium build. Lastly is this suspect, who is wanted by the British Transport Police after a woman was sexually assaulted in a train station toilet. The 36-year-old woman was followed by a man from Ipswich town centre and then cornered in the station toilet. She bravely fought the man off and raced to get help, by which time he had fled the scene. If you think you know or have seen any of these crooks, get in touch anonymously with Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. Right, that's all we've got time for this week. Many thanks to Ken, Jermaine and Tracy. Be sure to leave us a comment, like and subscribe, and we'll be back for more Crime Suspects.